Hi, my name is Emer, and welcome to my Sitecore channel made exclusively for Sitecore and anything related to Sitecore really. Today's video is going to be about Azure PaaS ContentDelivery max performance tuning for production environments. This video is not going to go, or I'm not going to go into details of the things that I'm going to be addressing or bringing up here. This video is made just to have a high-level overview of some of the things that can be done to ensure maximum performance for content delivery servers. Summary of this video is the things that I will be addressing are load testing, scaling up and out, private endpoints, Redis cache, SQL Elastic Pool, Sitecore Cache, Sitecore Configuration, and Azure front door. Load testing. Load testing is probably one of the most critical things that should be done when you are deploying your site or when you're working on your site. Actually, you should already be doing this as the site is being developed to ensure proper performance and to ensure appropriate caching is being done. Some of the things that you can do is you can use Sitecore built-in profiling, and you can go directly in Experience Editor, preview and debug, and view the individual pages with components on them. So you can see the statistics for each individual component, if there's any issues, if certain components are taking a long time to load, you can pinpoint those and you can go back to those components and check the code, make sure everything is cached, make sure code is executing as it should, and just helps you prevent any issues in the future. Visual Studio's code profiling tools is another thing you can do, and this is just straight in the Visual Studio. You go to debug mode, profiler, performance explorer, attach, detach, and then just attach the actual worker process for the site, and then you can actually profile the code. I don't have any screenshots or any more details about it, but you can go ahead and look that up on your own. Another one is a Visual Studio memory usage snapshot. That's also in Visual Studio. You just helps you track the memory performance of the application, and you can see it in a chart form, and you can monitor and make sure it doesn't go higher, it doesn't actually peak. You want to make sure it stays stable. You can also use load testing tools like JMeter. This is just a standard testing on the site itself, where you just create multiple users or simulate multiple users, hundreds of users accessing your site, accessing certain functions on the site. And finally, you can write custom code to load all content items or specific content items programmatically, kind of just to try to stress the system and the site, just to see how it will perform in the worst case scenario. Okay, next thing is scaling up and out. This is important and also needs to be appropriately set up. These are some of the recommendations, initial recommendations from Sitecore itself. You can see for XM and XP environments, they're pretty much the same. The lowest environments basically recommend 2 instances and S2 plan, while the highest environments recommend 8 instances and P2 V2 plan. Now, again, this all depends on your site, on your environment, just on your overall site structure and how everything is set up. So it's very important to do the load testing, and based on your load testing, you scale up and out up and or out your content delivery roles. So again, load testing first, and while you load test, scale up and or out to ensure everything is functioning as it should and there's no bottlenecks. Next one is private endpoints. Services, Sitecore services are secured but publicly reachable. For example, SQL Server, you can reach the URL typically, but you're not able to connect to it. I mean, obviously you have to add the IP address in the Azure console, and then some of the services you can reach by the URL, but you can't access. So setting up the private endpoints is completely going to hide those services from public. So not only you can't get to them, you can't sign in or use anything on those services, you cannot see them either. It also helps keeping all calls internal. Additionally, and this is pretty important, it reduces probability to have a performance issue due to SNAT port exhaustion. And SNAT port exhaustion is something that keeps coming up for some of the high performing sites that I've been working on. So this is an important precaution to ensure that doesn't happen. Redis is used to store session state data. The typical Redis issues that I've seen in high performing sites is that Redis typically, or not typically, sometimes tends to time out if not appropriately sized. And most of the recommendations are to use C1 plan. However, I always recommend to use the C2 or even C3 plan. C1 is just very bare minimum and the smallest of the small sites, really. And if you have a very small site with small traffic, C1 should be okay, but typically C1 is very, very inadequate. SQL Elastic Pool. So use SQL Elastic Pool to take advantage of additional processing power when needed. When you do configure each database with its own plan, you tend to have to continually monitor and adjust those as you get more content. Things can change. You can have a lot bigger web database, for example, that would require a next level up plan, or you can reduce the content and you need to lower it. So it's better just to group specific databases within an Elastic Pool, and then give them the access to additional power as needed. One of the examples, one could be that you group core, master, and web databases in its own dedicated SQL Elastic Pool, and then all other databases, with the exception of shard and shared databases, can use second dedicated Elastic Pool. Shard databases, on the other hand, should be using a dedicated plan each. And this is because shard databases tend to grow to be very large. We're talking terabytes large. Shared database should also use its own dedicated plan. Sitecore Cache, this is pretty standard recommendation. You always need to make sure your Sitecore Cache is properly configured. By default, Sitecore Cache is relatively undersized, and it's not adequate for pretty much any site of any size. So the recommended settings are much higher than the default settings. For example, prefetch data and item cache should be set to 1000 megabytes. Access result cache, even though it says 200 megabytes right here, I would recommend going to 500. Because access result cache is typically one of the most frequently undersized caches. And Finally, cache will have to be optimized and monitored to ensure best performance. Cache is not something that you can set and just forget about it, because as you add more content, as you have more users accessing your site, cache requirements and cache settings are constantly changing and need to be optimized on regular intervals to ensure optimal performance. Sitecore configuration also makes sure that uh, Sitecore is configured properly. Most of the configuration settings are set up and correctly and good to go from the from beginning, unless you're doing migration or upgrade from previous Sitecore installation. The default Sitecore instance configuration is typically configured correctly. There's just a couple of things that you should check or consider. One of them is enable cache key indexing for access result cache, item paths cache, and path cache. You can read more about the cache key indexing, but that's just one of the areas you can configure to better, to hopefully increase the performance of the site. Query max items is one of the other ones. Default value is 100. Some clients that I've been seeing and reviewing, they have this value set up as high as 5,000, and that's too high. This can cause serious performance issues depending how items are accessed, and also it can cause performance issues in the content editor as well, not only in the code itself as you access those items. And then one more configuration setting to check is memory monitor hook. There's a couple of settings in there, a couple of configuration settings, clear cache, garbage collect, and adjust load factor options should only be enabled to mitigate errors or as part of troubleshooting. So you can also, so all of those should be set to false basically, or you can just completely remove memory monitor hook from the CD role. Azure Front Door. So this is recommended to put in front of your content delivery servers or roles. It is a fast, reliable, and more secure cloud content delivery service with intelligent threat protection. Takes advantage of the Anycast protocol, which goes beyond providing traditional CDN capabilities by also providing advanced security capabilities, including DDoS attacks. Azure Front Door offers a range of security, acceleration, global load balancing, and caching solutions. Microsoft invests more than $1 billion annually on cybersecurity research and development, and that's a lot of that is going towards Front Door. Additionally, you can also consider Cloudflare or other third-party products. And that's the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe and leave comments, or if you have any suggestions or any ideas for future videos that I might do.